We love feeling nostalgic for times we never even lived in. Our memory works like a cheap filter. It blurs out the dirt, erases the lines, and paints the grass a toxic green. It is incredibly comforting to believe that everything was fairer back then. But harsh reality spits on these fantasies. The perfect world of the past is just a massive hallucination, a Frankenstein stitched together from scraps of propaganda. The great utopia turned out to be a smokescreen hiding brutal class division, shortages, and absurdity. Welcome to the autopsy of our collective unconscious. Let us rip the seals off the myths about the vanished superpower. How did it happen that the legendary Soviet ice cream was brought from the USA? Why did a country launching ships to Venus wipe itself with newspapers for decades? Where did universal equality go if school was not free and the elite gorged on special rations while the people got their teeth fixed without anesthesia? Today your worldview will crack at the seams forever. Illusions are canceled. Let us roll. Number 1. The American Ice Patch. Picture a hot July noon, the scorching asphalt of a capital park melting under your feet, and we are clutching a coveted waffle cup, that legendary creamy one, with a drop of melting pleasure, which we used to consider the peak of domestic gastronomic engineering. We sincerely believed this unique taste was the exclusive development of our technologists, a symbol of unreachable quality according to a unique standard. But let us check the source code of this legend. In 1936, the People's Commissar Anastas Mikoyan traveled to the United States of America to buy technologies, and brought back not only the recipe itself, but fully ready industrial machines. Essentially, the great Soviet ice cream is American ice cream simply reinstalled onto our architecture. The developers did not write the gastronomic engine from scratch. They just copied a successful Western open source project, adapted the interface, and passed it off as their breakthrough release. Apparently, the creator of this simulation was too lazy to write original scripts for desserts, so they hit copy and paste, leaving us to argue about the superiority of a borrowed file. Number 2. The cloud illusion of square meters. Remember that classic scene from old movies? You stand in a cramped office, the air smells of floor wax, and a stern official solemnly hands you a coveted paper voucher. The keys pleasantly weigh down your pocket, you step into a concrete box smelling of fresh paint, sincerely believing you have become the rightful owner of your fortress forever. We all grew up on this beautiful fairy tale about free and permanent housing. It sounds like a utopia, but the mechanics of the process here are completely different. Apartments never belonged to the people. This entire concrete paradise was exclusively a state fund. You had no right to officially sell these meters or legally pass them on through inheritance. The system only allowed for a complex bureaucratic exchange. In modern tech terms, you did not buy a hard drive with files, but merely received a temporary subscription to cloud storage without administrator rights. And the funniest part is that the server moderator could review the access terms at any moment. The architects of this matrix decided that property rights were too heavy a script overloading the system and replaced it with a cheap hologram. Number 3. A paid tutorial for the working class. A heartwarming picture often appears before our eyes. The 1st of September, rosy-cheeked first graders with gladioli, bright classrooms, and pride that every child has the right to absolutely free knowledge. We were proud that learning in this country was given away for free, with no hidden fees. The historical log, however, reveals a brutal logic error. From 1940 to 1956, education in the upper 8th, 9th, and 10th grades, as well as in universities, was strictly paid. Because of this financial barrier, many teenagers were forced to drop out of school after the 7th grade and go to work at factory machines. Translating this into gaming language, the developers set up an aggressive paywall at level 8 of character progression. Want to unlock the higher education branch? Buy a premium account. Not enough resources? Welcome to the low-level locations for an endless grind of basic materials. Obviously, the server urgently needed free units for heavy industry, and the educational quest was simply locked for those who did not donate. Number 4. A meat Frankenstein in a natural casing. You sit in the kitchen, cut a thick bouncy slice of tender pink Dr. sausage, put it on fresh bread, and taste real, crystal clear meat untainted by modern chemistry. It seemed to us that Soviet quality standards were carved from pure gold and allowed no compromises. Let us look into the recipe console. Starting in the 70s, it was officially allowed, according to all rules of approved standards, to add starch, bone broth, blood, and soy protein into this culinary shrine. shrine. This is a classic example of developers quietly lowering texture resolution so the server does not crash from overload. On paper, the game still runs at maximum quality, but inside, the models have already been replaced with cheap polygons made of bone meal and plant substitutes. We enjoyed this taste because the placebo effect in the human code works flawlessly. Nature loves such jokes. The main thing is to stretch a beautiful interface over it, and users will never decode what is under the hood anyway. Number 5. Deleted system users. Clean avenues, smiling faces on posters, the certainty that in the great country of the victorious proletariat, there simply could not be people sleeping on heating pipes. We were sure that poverty and homelessness were exclusively attributes of the decaying West. I hasten to disappoint you. These invisible people always existed. The very phrase without a fixed place of residence is not street slang, but a dry official Soviet police abbreviation. They were not treated or integrated into society. They were simply evicted beyond the famous 101st kilometer out of sight. In the state's operating system, it looked like deleting broken, non-playable characters from the main map and moving them to a hidden system folder. No character in the render view means no problem with the location's rating dropping. Brilliant memory management in its absurdity. Why fix bugs in the social code when you can simply move corrupted files off screen and pretend they do not exist? Number 6. VIP status on the communism server. Newsreel footage shows us a monolithic crowd. Everyone wears similar coats, everyone rides the same trams, everyone gets the same salaries, sincerely believing in absolute equality and brotherhood. We were proud that class differences were ground into dust, but if we open the hidden directories, we will see that the party nomenclature lived in a completely different simulation. They received special rations with delicacies, were treated in closed special clinics with the best equipment, shopped in stores for the elite, and lived in houses with upgraded layouts. Equality turned out to be just a base skin for regular players, while the server administrators gave themselves super user rights, activated God mode, and enjoyed exclusive loot boxes. The class system did not disappear, it just changed its name and hid behind the closed doors of distribution centers. After all, no matter how hard you write the code for a utopia, there will always be a back door for those with console access. Number 7. An audio track cropping error. Stern faces, strict suits, high morals. We all remember the famous telethon of 1986 when a Soviet woman said into the microphone with ironclad certainty a phrase that became a meme. In our country, there are no carnal pleasures. It seemed to us that this was the peak of puritanical absurdity, proving that people back then reproduced exclusively by butting on party orders. The scenario turned out to be much more prosaic. This is a classic data transmission error. The woman actually said, "We have no sex on television, we have love." But at that moment, the hall erupted in laughter, completely drowning out the end of the phrase. As a result, a truncated line of code went on air. The system simply could not process the entire audio packet and output a shortened log that forever imprinted itself in the nation's cultural code. The universe loves taking things out of context and turning a technical microphone glitch into a national ideology. Apparently, the god of irony was in a great mood that day. Number 8. A leaky isolation firewall. A huge gray wall, concrete blocks, and barbed wire separating a sixth of the Earth's landmass from the rest of the planet. We are used to thinking that the Iron Curtain was an absolute impenetrable dome under which people stewed in their own juice, never seeing other horizons. However, traffic in this network flowed quite actively. Millions of citizens worked and lived abroad. Soviet engineers, doctors, geologists, and builders went en masse to African, Asian countries, and Cuba to build infrastructure there. This system worked like a corporate VPN for selected employees. Access to the external network was strictly blocked for the main user pool, but developers opened secure tunnels for business tasks. Isolation was merely an illusion for the domestic consumer, while on external servers, our specialists actively farmed geopolitical influence. Even the strictest system administrator knows that the global network does not work without open ports. Number 9. Chemical hardware overclocking. We take a rosy, slightly crooked apple from a wooden table, bite into it, and rejoice that we are eating an absolutely clean, natural product, grown without any Western chemistry and pesticides. We thought the agriculture of that time lived in perfect harmony with nature. Let us check the environmental monitoring logs. It turns out the state was one of the world leaders in the application of aggressive dust and killer nitrates on its fields. To fulfill the quota, lands were flooded with chemicals with such fury as if tomorrow would never come. In IT terms, this is classic processor overclocking to critical temperatures for the sake of high benchmarks. Nobody thought about the fact that the Ecology's motherboard could simply burn out from such loads. The main goal was to deliver beautiful numbers in the report right now. Caring for Nature turned out to be an unreleased expansion pack for which the developers simply did not have the budget or time. In the end, winners are not judged for overheating the system. Number 10. The beta version of concrete honeycombs. You move into a new, cozy, albeit cramped 5-story building, arrange your furniture, and sigh with relief thinking that this reliable brick and panel fort will stand for centuries, protecting your family. We firmly believe that mass housing was created as a durable triumph of Soviet architecture, but the engineers thought differently. These standard boxes were designed exclusively as a temporary project with a shelf life of only 25 years, meant to urgently relocate people from wooden barracks until architects could invent and build real, shining communist housing. It was a typical software crutch, a quick day one patch designed to close a critical vulnerability on the server, but as any tired programmer knows, there is nothing more permanent than a temporary solution that accidentally worked. The beta version became the final release, and we still live in textures whose support cycle expired back in the last century. Number 11. The Glass Attack Vector. A hot day, a soda vending machine on a street corner. We drop in 3 kopecks, the machine hisses and pours syrup into a faceted glass from which half the city drank before us. We rinse it with a freezing trickle and drink it to the bottom, sincerely believing that back then people had an iron immunity and no infection stuck to them. Medical logs hide a much darker picture. People got sick, and how. Outbreaks of dysentery and herpes epidemics were regular guests in the cities. It was just strictly forbidden to write about these incidents in the press. It is like taking turns plugging a public flash drive found at a train station into your computer and believing that catching a virus is impossible simply because the antivirus does not display a notification on the screen. The absence of an error message does not mean the system is running stably. The developers just disabled incident logging so users would not panic in the middle of gameplay. Logic seems to have left the chat at this point, but we are just getting warmed up. Number 12. Elite pay to win for basic loot. A loaf of white bread for a few kopecks, cheap milk, tram rides for almost nothing. We often sigh nostalgically, remembering these funny numbers on price tags, firmly believing that life back then cost pennies and was accessible to everyone. However, the economic model of this game hit a devilish catch. Yes, basic survival resources were given away almost for free, but as soon as you wanted normal clothes, shoes, or electronics, prices skyrocketed into the stratosphere. A regular color television cost about 700 rubles, which was an engineer's salary for half a year of exhausting work, and buying a personal car turned into financial slavery, equivalent to 10 years of continuous labor. This is the classic mechanic of a modern free-to-play mobile game. Downloading the app and running around the starting area is free, but for any beautiful skin or vehicle, you will have to give up a kidney. Brilliant monetization management in its ruthlessness. Number 13. Offline mode on the highways. Empty, wide, sun-drenched avenues of Moscow down which a lone Volga lazily cruises. We admired how perfectly public transport worked and were glad that the streets did not choke from miles-long traffic jams, considering it an achievement in urban planning. The transport script, however, harbored a nasty secret. There were no traffic jams not because people consciously chose buses, but because a personal car was an unreachable, almost mythical luxury. To buy regular Ziguli cars, people signed up in humiliating queues where they had to check in and wait for 7 or even 10 years. It is like admiring that a server has absolutely no lag, forgetting to mention that the system requirements artificially cut off 99% of those wishing to enter the game. Perfect optimization through mass user bans. No players means no network load. An elegant yet extremely cynical solution. Number 14. Smuggled denim textures. Imagine a dark alleyway where a young guy in a trench coat looking around hands you a worn bag with thick blue pants. We are used to thinking that wearing Western jeans was equated to high treason, and for this piece of fabric, you could easily be thrown into the dungeons or expelled from the Komsomol. The legal code says otherwise. No one was jailed simply for wearing jeans. The problem was that these pants were physically not produced inside the country. This spawned a massive black market and legendary black black marketeers who sold this scarce commodity for 2 or 3 months of wages. In the gaming world, this is called a regional lock. The item is not banned by server rules, but it is not officially sold in your region. As a result, players are forced to turn to shady merchants, buying cosmetic items for an insane amount of gold. The attempt to hide the texture from users only resulted in it becoming the most desired artifact in the game. Number 15, the Day 1 Fat Patch. Returning once again to our favorite sausage, we are used to thinking that its name was not just a marketing gimmick, but a guarantee that this product was created by the brightest medical minds to cure stomach diseases and maintain the ideal health of the nation. The historical truth destroys this dietary idyll. This product was created in the 30s not for health resorts at all, but for extreme rapid weight gain by people who were catastrophically starving after long years of devastation. Its recipe was designed as a maximum calorie bomb, overflowing with heavy fats and energy. It was not a tool for fine-tuning the body, but an emergency battery overcharge script. The developers simply poured maximum energy into the code so the system would not shut down from exhaustion. It is funny how an emergency patch, created to save from a starvation crash, eventually turned into an elixir of health and longevity in people's minds. Number 16, Hardcore Dentistry Mode. Snow White offices, stern doctors, and starched coats. Pride in the most advanced and, most importantly, free medicine in the world. We thought the Soviet citizen was surrounded by scientific care from the cradle to extreme old age. Let us peek into the treatment room. Right up until the very collapse of the great country, mass dentistry almost never used normal, effective anesthesia. Teeth were drilled, nerves removed, and canals cleaned literally raw, while reusable glass syringes with blunt needles were simply boiled in pots before the next patient. This is not even a bug. This is an ultra nightmare difficulty level intentionally enabled by the developers. Survival without health kits, where physical pain served as the only indicator of tactile feedback. The state provided free repairs for your biological shell, but nobody paid for completely disabling the pain sensors in the process. Harsh code, written without a drop of empathy for the user. Number 17, the Capitalist Mana Potion, a dark, bubbling liquid in a glass bottle, which we considered absolute poison, an ideological weapon of the enemy infiltrating minds through taste buds. We believed that foreign soda was strictly forbidden on the sacred soil of socialism. Let us open the trade protocol logs. American Coca-Cola was the official legal drink at the 1980 Olympics in Moscow. Moreover, factories of its main competitor, Pepsi, operated completely legally on our territory since 1974, brilliantly trading their syrup for Stolichnaya vodka via barter. This is a shining example of cross-platform integration, while marketers shouted about the irreconcilable exclusivity of consoles. Corporate administrators quietly exchanged assets and divided profits in the background. As soon as it comes to resources, any ideological firmware is instantly turned off to optimize profit. Number 18, the double grind of the Soviet woman. Beautiful posters showed us a strong, muscular female worker in a headscarf, confidently driving a tractor or standing at a machine tool on par with men. We admired the fact that the state gave women absolute freedom and independence, dragging them out of kitchen slavery. In reality, however, this emancipation script was called the double shift. A woman was obliged to work a full day in heavy production, and returning home, took on the colossal weight of unoptimized chores, queues, and childcare. Men on this firmware fundamentally did not do household chores. The system simply forced one processor to run 2 resource-intensive applications at once without extra cooling, which inevitably led to core burnout. Freedom turned out not to be the removal of shackles, but the addition of another chain, sold under the guise of a progressive update. Number 19, the color coding of intellect. We go down into the subway and see cars packed with people holding books. The perfect picture of the most reading nation on the planet, where every second person was deep in thought over the pages of Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. The scenario sounds noble, but the book trade database holds an ironic secret. Good books were an extreme deficit. People subscribed to multi-volume collected works of great classics, not to absorb the wisdom of the ages, but often just for the color of the spine. Volumes were chosen so their shade perfectly matched the color of the new wallpaper in the Romanian sideboard. This is the typical behavior of a gamer who buys dozens of games on sales just so they look pretty in the digital library, without ever launching a single one. The visual interface always beats the text content because the human brain is too lazy to process massive arrays of data unnecessarily. Number 20, the stealth mode of serial killers. Quiet, safe streets of evening cities, kids playing peacefully in the yards until dark. We were absolutely certain that horrible maniacs existed only in Hollywood thrillers, and our society was cleansed of such deviations. The terrifying truth lies in a glitch in law enforcement algorithms. Serial killers, like the infamous Chikatilo, operated with impunity for decades precisely because the police system categorically refused to believe in their existence. Official documentation stated that such crimes were exclusively a capitalist disease, impossible under socialism. The antivirus ignored the destructive Trojan simply because its signature database was hard-coded to say, such viruses do not exist in our operating system. Ignoring an error in the logs does not fix the server. It only gives malicious code the ability to multiply uncontrollably in silence. Number 21, an unlimited corporate card, the image of an ascetic leader who, after his death, left the state nothing but worn-out boots, an old tunic, and a couple of pipes. We sincerely admired this example of crystal honesty and self-sacrifice, believing the ruler lived the life of a simple worker. A server capacity audit shatters this beautiful hologram. Joseph Vissarionovich had dozens of luxurious guarded state dachas spread across the vast country with a colossal staff of personal servants, guards, and chefs. He simply did not need paper money in his pockets because the state paid for every second of his existence. It is like a corporate CEO who officially writes himself a zero salary but writes off the purchase of personal yachts, planes, and mansions to the company's server maintenance budget. Why do you need virtual currency if the entire game world with all its resources already belongs to you by the right of the creator? Number 22. The biblical copy-paste of Ilyich. He who does not work, neither shall he eat. This harsh coined phrase stared at us from every red banner, from every factory poster. We absorbed with our mother's milk the certainty that this brilliant saying belongs personally to the leader of the world proletariat, Vladimir Lenin, who forged these words in the furnace of the revolution. Let us run a plagiarism check. This phrase is a word-for-word quote from the New Testament, specifically from the second epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Thessalonians. Bolshevik ideologists simply took this piece of text, cut off the religious context, and glued it to their political platform. A lazy programmer's brilliant trick: copy a piece of reliable legacy code proven over millennia, erase the original author's comments, and deploy it under your own copyright. Open source religion in action. Why invent new slogans when you can use old patterns that have proven their effectiveness? At this stage, the reality writers apparently went to lunch and trusted an intern to write the plot. Number 23, parallel rendering of inventions. We knew an indisputable truth from childhood. Popov invented the radio, Lotogen the light bulb, and our compatriots built the first airplane. State propaganda carefully cultivated the idea of our absolute technological superiority on the planet. But if you look at the global development log, it turns out that Marconi and Popov, Edison, and Lotogen worked on the exact same concepts almost simultaneously, being on different ends of the globe. This is not malicious intent or stolen blueprints. It is simply the mechanics of tech tree progression. Different development teams, having access to the same basic resources and laws of physics, inevitably write similar pieces of code to cover the same system needs. The universe just released a massive update for humanity and sent data packets to all available servers simultaneously. Number 24, Moonshine Downgrade. The 80s, Mikhail Gorbachev's prohibition, a noble attempt to cleanse the nation of the alcoholic haze and increase labor productivity. We believed that state bans could instantly rewrite the minds of millions of people. The result of this directive was catastrophic. Instead of quitting drinking, the entire massive country collectively went underground. All sugar, yeast, and tomato paste instantly evaporated from store shelves, and the nation switched to mass, artisanal moonshine brewing. This is a classic example of what happens when the administration suddenly deletes the official app store. Users do not stop consuming content. They simply migrate en masse to the dark web, creating uncontrolled analogs full of viruses. You can remove a button from the interface, but you cannot delete a basic need from the human system core. Code will always find a way around the block. Number 25. Artificial online boosting. The ideal society of victorious socialism, where unemployment is completely absent and every person is engaged in creative labor for the good of the motherland. We look down on capitalist crises, proud of our stable jobs. Real statistics, however, show a hidden bug in this economic model. There was massive hidden unemployment in the country. At factories and institutes, the staff roster was artificially inflated. Work that could easily be done by one qualified employee was lazily done by 5, and refusing employment resulted in harsh sanctions, up to prison time for parasitism. This is like developers of an unpopular multiplayer game launching thousands of empty idle bots onto the server to simulate high concurrent numbers and bustling life for investors. The processor does not seem loaded, but the memory is completely choked with useless processes waiting in line for deletion. Number 26. Suppressing bug reports. Footage of May Day demonstrations, happy faces, sincere love for the party, and the absolute absence of any social upheavals. It seemed to us that the Soviet people were a single monolith that never rebelled against its creators. However, hidden archive files hold dark secrets. Riots and strikes did happen, and they were quite brutal. The most tragic of them is the Novichoksk massacre of 1962, when workers driven to despair took to the square because of a sharp wage cut amidst rising meat prices. The protest was ruthlessly crushed by the regular army. In system administration terms, this is a situation where users send massive critical error reports after a failed patch, and the developers, instead of rolling back the update, simply format the hard drives of the disgruntled players. Perfect silence on the forum is achieved not by fixing bugs, but by permanently banning anyone who dares to write about them. Number 27. The intergalactic hygiene paradox. Silvery rockets pierce the black void of space. Satellites cruise the orbit. Automated stations successfully land on the scorching surface of Venus. We were sincerely proud to live in the most high-tech empire, ahead of its time. But if we lower our gaze from the heavens to the Earth, we discover a spectacular absurdity. While sending highly complex probes to other planets, the country did not produce toilet paper at all until 1969. For decades, citizens of the great space power used old newspapers with articles about the achievements of socialism for basic hygiene. It looks as if a crazy gamer in a strategy game poured all his experience points into the space exploration branch, leaving the basic comfort and hygiene branch at level 0. As a result, your unit can build an interstellar cruiser, but after work, they are forced to wipe themselves with the blueprints of that very cruiser. A brilliant imbalance in the tech tree. Number 28. The demographic banhammer. Women with heads held high, freed from the chains of patriarchy, confident that the state fully trusts them to manage their own bodies. We believed the land of Soviets was a pioneer in matters of reproductive freedom, but let us open the criminal code of the Stalinist era. From 1936 to 1955, all abortions were strictly criminalized. People were sent to prison for this procedure, both those who performed it and the women themselves, caught in desperate situations. This is direct interference with the database. The administration simply forcibly disabled the delete character button to artificially boost demographic metrics on the server before upcoming conflicts. The user agreement was rewritten unilaterally, depriving players of the basic right to manage their inventory. The system cares about the number of units, not their individual comfort. Number 29. Backing up faith. The massive destruction of domes, the triumph of scientific atheism, the certainty that there is no God and space is absolutely empty. We thought religion had been completely erased from the state's operating system and replaced by dry Marxist formulas. However, during the harshest trials of 1943, at the very height of the war, Joseph Stalin personally allowed the restoration of the patriarchate and the opening of churches. The top leadership urgently needed to boost the morale of an exhausted people, and millions of people who had secretly baptized children in basements all those years stepped into the light again. This is classic sysadmin behavior during a critical server crash. When the new cutting-edge software starts falling apart under colossal load, they panic and restore the old deleted legacy protocol because it is the only thing capable of keeping the system from a total collapse. Ideology is ideology, but there are no atheists in a burning server room. Number 30, scripted vacation locations. A feeling of total isolation. The certainty that an ordinary citizen could never leave the borders of their country to see other shores. We are used to pitying those people, thinking they lived in a deaf, sealed box with no windows. But tourism department statistics break this sad stereotype. There was a powerful tourist union, and ordinary citizens quite legally and regularly went on trips to relax in Bulgaria, East Germany, Yugoslavia, and other countries of the socialist camp. It was not an absolute ban on travel, it was just access to a strictly moderated list of friendly servers. You could leave your starting location, but only to switch to another map running on the exact same ideological engine. The sandbox turned out to be a bit wider than we thought. It is just that the color of the sand on the neighboring beach was approved by the exact same party commission. Number 31, an Imperial Lemonade backup. Uncorking a green glass bottle, we see bright bubbles rushing upward. Tarragon lemonade always seemed to us the quintessence of the Soviet food industry, a brilliant invention of our technologists who gave children this magical emerald drink. Let us check the commit date in the repository. It turns out this amazing recipe was invented by a brilliant Georgian pharmacist, Mitrofan Laguds, back in the distant year of 1887 during the era of the Russian Empire, long before the Bolsheviks came to power. This is an old, reliable software module that miraculously survived the complete formatting of the hard drive during the revolution, smoothly integrated into the new operating system, and was successfully repackaged under a new brand. Truly high-quality code does not depend on the political regime. If a script works perfectly, the new administration simply changes the copyright and keeps selling the product to happy users. Number 32, the invisible respawn tax. We look fondly at old metal spoons or cast iron pans, where the price is stamped right into the metal, unchanged for decades. We were convinced that inflation was completely absent in that great country, and the economy stood on an unshakable foundation of stability. The accounting algorithm, unfortunately, hid an elegant deception. Inflation did not go anywhere. It just went into stealth mode. Instead of scaring users with rising numbers on price tags, the system simply removed goods from the shelves. Products became extremely scarce and instantly flowed to the black market, where they were sold under the counter for triple the price. In game mechanics, it looks like this. The gold in your inventory formally does not depreciate, but the merchant's item array is constantly empty. To buy the sword you need, you still have to go to illegal characters and give them 3 times as much currency. Balance always takes its toll, even if the interface tries to calm you down. Number 33, the multinational engine, a mighty stern empire, which the whole world simply called Russia. We often fall for the illusion that it was a monolithic, purely Russian state, continuing the traditions of the czars. The political science code says otherwise. The state actively and forcefully supported the creation of national republics. That is when their administrative borders were drawn to promote a new synthetic Soviet identity. And at the helm of this giant ship for decades stood a Georgian, Joseph Stalin, and a Ukrainian, Leonid Brezhnev. It was a highly complex cross-platform framework that tried with all its might to look like a single native application. Project managers of different nationalities diligently compiled this monstrous code into a single database, ignoring cultural memory conflicts. The source files turned out to be much more diverse and contradictory than the final logo on the loading screen tried to prove. We are closing the doors of our system glitch archive, but the tour of reality bugs never truly ends. Studying these strange historical oversights, we understand that the world is not a flawless mechanism, but an endless series of patches, compromises, and errors that are brilliant in their absurdity. We look for deep sacred meaning in everything, while the universe, it seems, simply flips a coin and lazily hits random keys, watching us try to find logic in it. Now it is your turn to open the console. Write your own fact number 34 in the comments, one that still breaks your internal compiler. Thank you for exploring this imperfect code with me. Session ended. Saving logs. See you in the next reality updates.